Okay, that's the truth bomber. Just want to clarify a few things with regard to Kanye West and what he believes about the Jews, which in fact he is, if you do your research right. Now, if you go back in time, there was a Khazarian people that were nomadic people. They were derived, I think, or came from the golden horde of Genghis Khan. They're a mixture, but their DNA has proven to be more superior than anything else on the planet. True story. Now this links to the Rothschilds, and we all know about the Rothschilds. Well, they are Ashkenazi Jewish. Their name originally, I think Amschel Rothschild, was Bauer, but they moved it to Rothschild, which means red shield in German. Now the Ashkenazi, this nomadic people that came from Khazaria, they used to terrorize their neighbors. And Russia at the time said to them, this is hundreds of years ago, Russia said, listen, you must teach your people Judaism, Christianity, or Muslim, and stop terrorizing your neighbors with black magic and sacrificing children and women to the deities of Baal and Moloch, a long time ago. So you fast forward a little bit, and the Khazarian people then decided, the king decided Judaism was how they were going to lead their people, and they chose Judaism because it's God's people, and they vowed to seek revenge on Russia, believe it or not. So this is an ancient war that's been going on for a long time. So the Ashkenazis then usurped Judaism by infiltrating their religion and then mixing it with the Talmud. The Talmud and the Torah have been blended, which is, if you read the Talmud, it's pretty sick, and it speaks of, child sacrifice and woman, sacrifice. So we have now Karl Marx, sidestep, changing up a gear. Karl Marx, right? His name, Marx, is derived from the word of Mars. And Mars, as we know in astrology, is the god of war. And Karl Marx is the creator and the son of a couple of rabbis and is Ashkenazi, believe it or not. And he created communism. Now, in Russia, once they sought revenge, they infiltrated Russia, as they did with Judaism, and the Bolsheviks were the party that massacred the Tsars, the last empiric leadership of Russia, and they massacred that whole family. So 90% of the Russian Bolsheviks, believe it or not, Jewish, Ashkenazi, yeah. So they used Stalin as a puppet, just like they've done with Obama, and just like they did with Hitler. Now, at this time, in the UK, we have to change it up a bit. Amschel Rothschild, they bought their way into the UK House of Lords. Now, there was no Jews allowed in the House of Lords because it was like rule. But they bought their way in, and his son, I think Nathan, he decided to go the extreme Ashkenazi Jewish way and created Israel. And they used the Rothschilds, and they could only do this once they got into the House of Lords to be able to have the power to do it. And what they did is, what he did is that he became Zionist, which is Ashkenazi Jewish. It's a sort of like an extremist sort of thing. And they had the Balfour Declaration. No one of the world agreed to it. That Israel was just going to build itself here in Palestine, in that place. And that's what came to be in November. I mean, sorry, not November. In 1913. And then in 1917 was when we had the Russian Revolution. And at that time, after they were destroyed, this faction was moving up towards Hungary. And there was almost a revolution there in Hungary at the same time. And at this time, Hitler was coming to power. So as they used Obama and Biden as a puppet, they used Hitler, who had the most incredible oratory skills of the ages. And they put him into power, and he became the leader of the Nazi Party. And guess where Nazi comes from? Ashkenazi. So the Ashkenazis, and Hitler wasn't aware of this, but he was aware that the Ashkenazi, the Jewish, had toppled Russia and moved up towards Hungary. And so you've got this real interesting sort of problem where you've got, if you ask a Jewish person if they're Ashkenazi or not, they'll look at you like this and they'll be like, I'm Ashkenazi. Because the Ashkenazi people, they know they are not actually Jewish. They just took on the Jewish faith. This is the problem. This is the big fuck up of all time. So, Hitler's coming to power. He recognizes what's going on and he's, fuck you, I'm going to protect the fatherland. So we're going to kill all you motherfuckers. So that's what he set out to do. And I don't know, whether it happened to the degree it did, or whether it's like, 9/11, or the COVID, or the Titanic. I mean, the mass weapons of destruction in Iraq, and perhaps, the moon landing. I mean, come on, man. There's a whole list of this shit. It's been going on for a long time. So Hitler comes to power, and he wants to fucking massacre. The bedrock of Ashkenazi Judaism is in Poland. And isn't it funny, just to current present day, we have Joe Biden saying, why doesn't Poland go into the Ukraine? Because this war that's going on is the same age-old war between two factions, the Russians and these Khazarian nomadic black magic people. They have the Ashkenazi gene. Now, interestingly enough, I met a nurse yesterday at Starbucks, and she said when doing blood tests for the COVID, there was a separate question as to whether or not there was any reference or any people had known to be have Ashkenazi blood. So, and it's a proven fact. That's why in the 50s, 60s, the Nobel Peace Prizes and all the advances in technology were all Ashkenazi. Now, as a little sidestep, because I'm not persecuting the Ashkenazi, although so far it looks pretty fucking miserable. There are two factions, not all Christians are good, and not all fucking Muslims are bad, and not all Muslims are good, etc., etc., right? But we must recognize the Jewish part in all this. Well, the Ashkenazi, because they are not God's people. They usurped and claimed to be Jewish, and they changed their names. Now, speaking of names, I have to enlighten you to Epstein, which we all know that name. He's as corrupt as they come as far as his fetish for children. And Weinstein, Ashkenazi again. And we all know what happened to him in the Hollywood, that little cesspool. And then we have Silverstein, another Ashkenazi Jew. Guess what he did? He was the one that invested in the insurance for two Twin Towers 6 months before 9/11, the disaster, for two plane attacks. Now, how did that come about? How did he know? Silverstein, remember. Oh, and who's the other chap? What's his name? Rosenstein? Ashkenazi Jew. He was the one who was caught on tape wanting to record President Trump to frame him for impeachment. Ashkenazi. Now, the head of the Judiciary Committee, I believe, is Nadler. Another Ashkenazi, would you believe? Jeff Bezos, another Ashkenazi, Nazi. And funnily enough, when the Second World War came to a fucking end, there was a negotiation, and the final sort of agreement and surrender for everyone happened, but for the Russians it didn't for 2 days later, because they were still fighting in the east, because that is still the original war between the two factions of the Russi and the Khazarian people, nomadic people. So, they negotiated at the time, the US, Operation Paperclip, CIA, and they transferred all the Nazis to America. And they spirited old Hitler off to Argentina. And there's a German Nazi, township encampments all over Argentina. Go down there, check it out. And then you have America, which is now filled with the Ashkenazi Jews, which are only 3%, apparently. And they own all the media, hence why they have a real issue with Kanye West. And everyone's like, oh, Kanye West, bad. Donald Trump, Orange Man, bad. And you've got all these Ashkenazis that are going to jail or prison for pedophilia and all that kind of tricky doo-dah. And Les Wexner, who's like the, I believe, the chairman, or was the chairman of Victoria's Secret, who was funding Epstein. So Epstein and what he was up to was a blackmail operation by the Mossad, the Israel Ashkenazi Jews. So what happened when they created Israel? Let's go back a bit. Israel, they invited all the Jews to Israel to say, this is now Israel's land, the God's people, God's land. But the Jews didn't realize, as most of the world doesn't realize, that the Ashkenazi Jews were the ones inviting them in there. So you can't tell who's who now. But they've all changed their names along the way, and they're all inbred. Go research the Rothschilds. They all screw mothers, daughters, sons, fathers, cat kind of shit. And that's how it goes. And we all need to know this to move forward, because they keep blowing this Holocaust trumpet when all the media and the music industry is controlled and run by Ashkenazi Jews. Now you tell me. I'm not anti-Semitic. These are just facts. Enjoy.